So in this video, we're going to go through the steps of a upper extremity lymphedema bandage using the Rosedal K as our main component for compression. And we do realize that there's many different ways in which you can wrap the arm. This is a way that we typically do it at Klose training. And we're going to start typically with some skin care. There will be a lotion on the arm just to protect the skin and keep it moist and not from drying out underneath the bandaging. You always want to keep the skin nice and healthy. Then we start with the stockinette, which is a TG tubular gauze. And I selected a size 6 for our patient here. For our make-believe patient, I usually roll it up like you would do with a regular nylon. And earlier, I actually cut a hole for the thumb into this product. So we're going to bring this over her hand, make sure that the thumb goes through its hole, and then bring this all the way up to the shoulder. And we want to make this nice and long. There's plenty extra here that's going to be very important at the end of the bandaging. So we'll touch on that later. So this is our stockinette that would protect the bandage materials from the lotion that we used on the arm. And now we're going to go into the finger wrapping. So for the finger wrapping, we are selecting today a Transilast Classic, which is in 6 centimeter width. And you can certainly use it the way it comes out of the package in 6 centimeter width. Sometimes when you have a smaller hand, the product seems a little bit too wide. So what we do, and especially when the patient has lymphedema, we wrap this into half the width. And unlike most therapists who actually start here at the wrist, I like to start a little bit lower at the hand itself. So we are just below the wrist. And the reason for that is we avoid a tourniquet effect on the product. If I wrap too much of that finger wrap around the wrist and it becomes too tight, then we have a tourniquet effect, and that doesn't allow the hand to decongest anymore. So open up wide. And another thing that I want to point out, because I find that is very helpful, is I'm very right-handed. So I typically hold the roll in my dominant hand. And I start with the finger that is most to my right. If she had given me her left arm for bandaging, I would have probably started with the pinky. So right now, as we're wrapping her right hand and arm, we're going to go around the most proximal part of the hand, distal from the wrist, and we're going to start wrapping the thumb. We're going to go straight away to the nail bed, and then in several turns, bring the product down to the hand and the web space. I'm going to go around the bottom of the hand, come out on the lateral side, cross over the dorsum of the hand, and then I'm going to do the index finger. Now I'm going to go back down in several turns closer to the hand. Once I reach that web space between index finger and middle finger, I'm actually going to crisscross on the dorsum of the hand, which is really important because we want to have a little bit more pressure over the dorsal aspect of the MC piece as opposed to the palmar aspect of the MC piece. I'm going to go around the bottom, go to the next finger. And so I do each finger in the same manner, going straight away to the nail bed, wrap it in several turns to get good coverage, and then crisscross over the knuckle. Bring it to the other side of the hand, around, and typically what happens is you may not have enough of the product for the ring finger, so I go straight away to the pinky. I'm going to do the pinky finger here, since the sequence in which we wrap the fingers don't matter. I'm going to do the pinky finger here, and then when I'm finished with that, I'm just going to let it be here. If you don't pull at the end, it will not snap back. It will just stay nicely. And then I'm going to take a second Transilast Classic. Now you could start it right here, distal from the wrist, or a little bit lower and go around the couple heads one more time. And then I'm going to continue here with the finger that I'm wrapping, the ring finger that was not wrapped previously. I'm going to start at the nail bed, do my turns, bringing it closer to the hand as I go. And then crisscross again on the dorsum of the hand. Now, at this point, you will have a decent amount of that product still left. And we can do a little trick to reinforce pressure on the metacarpal heads. First of all, I want to have my make-believe patient make a fist and kind of like realize what kind of like pressure we have here over the knuckles. A little bit, right? But what we also see when she makes a fist, there's typically some gaps in the bandaging still. So what we're going to do here with the leftover of this roll, we're going to go around each finger, crisscross over the MCP, focus on the index finger, middle finger, and then eventually the ring finger here. Those are the more important ones. And two things will happen. Once you've done another crisscross here on each of the MCPs, you will have most of the gaps closed, and there's a little bit more pressure over the knuckles. So now open up. We still have a little bit left. In that case, I will use it up on the pinky and perhaps go one time around the metacarpal heads and then go across the palm to the other side. I want to get good, decent pressure here on the metacarpal heads in order to have the most pressure here over the dorsum and not on the wrist where it could potentially cause a tourniquet. Now, if you do tuck it in here, then make sure that it's tucked in smoothly and that it's not going to create a pressure point. So that's my wrapping for the fingers. I'm going to ask her one more time if that's a good pressure, decent pressure. Now, the other thing that we want to do when we're finished with the hand here, we want to actually do a little bit of checking the capillary refill. If we just blanch each of the fingertips, and it will blanch here, and then the normal color should return within 2 or 3 seconds. And once we accomplish that, then we know that she has good circulation and that there's no issue with the finger wraps and the pressure on the fingers. So for our padding, we are actually doing the Rosedal Soft this time. And what I typically do is I'm going to kind of like fold it in about 3 or 4 inches. I fold the product and then I use the scissors and actually cut a little hole here. I don't cut any product out, but I actually do a little bit of a crisscross cut here on the product. And that will allow me to hook that product onto her thumb. So we're going to use that opening now to accommodate the thumb. And I want to be sure as I'm wrapping it here around the hand that the metacarpal heads are covered. Sometimes if you want to do a second layer here on the hand, because that's a sensitive area, what I do is I bring it around to the point of the thumb, then I use my scissors again, cut the product in just about 3/4 of an inch, and then maybe a little bit more in her case. Cut that in a little bit more, maybe an inch. And then bring this product around the hand one more time, around the thumb, nice and easy. And from here, we're going to bring it onto the wrist and onto the arm. And at this point, if you make a fist here, you can actually push in a little bit. At this point, you want to stretch the product a little bit. And you see where the product overlaps and where it doesn't overlap. In order to get a double layer, we want to be kind of like a little precise and just kind of like use a 50% overlap and run it up the arm. Make sure that you get good coverage in the cubital fossa, and we're just going to run it up all the way, even if it doesn't overlap perfectly here, all the way to the top. I'm going to bring this up here. I would typically bring it around the very top, and if now there's a little sliver of skin showing, I'm not going to worry about this because that's not going to be a sensitive area, and make sure that the remaining product is not going to chafe that area. So I'm going to just tuck this in here a little bit for now. So now we have essentially a double layer of the Rosidal Soft on the hand, which is nice and padded. We have a double layer on the forearm, and not quite a double layer, but a decent amount of padding here on the upper arm. I'm going to use my first short stretch, which is a 6 centimeter short stretch bandage. The first Rosidal K. A lot of therapists will actually start it on the hand, and that's totally fine. I find that we get a better transition over the wrist and the hand if we actually start that bandage on the wrist with one anchor turn, okay? And then we're going to bring it down towards the hand. At this point, I'm going to ask her to open the hand wide. Keep the hand wide open because it spreads the metacarpal heads out a little bit. Then I'm going to bring this product down, and I use my backhand to just smooth it and make sure that it's nice and smooth, so the bandage, the finished product, will look decent on her hand and forearm. I'm going to bring this around, go between her index finger and thumb. Now, in some cases, you may have to fold it in a little bit here, right beneath that web space. But I find it not necessary in most cases. So we can leave it open here, but you can fold it in a little bit to make the bandage a little more narrow when it goes between the index finger and the thumb. I don't find that necessary here. But a very important part is, because it's a short stretch bandage, we have very good control of the pressure and where we want more pressure. So what I would do is I would hold, this is a little trick, I hold the bandage here tight, and then I use my backhand and smooth it, and that will actually lend a little bit more pressure right here in that area where I kind of like stretch the product, and then I can go easy around the bend again. Come up here on the ulnar side, open up wide again. Again, because here over the metacarpal heads I want to have more pressure, I would sometimes use my backhand, the hand that doesn't hold the bandage, and I would smooth that on a little bit more, just to get a little bit more pressure. And now I feel like we get to the point where I have decent smooth pressure here. So now I'm going to ask my make-believe patient here to make a fist and feel how that feels. Mm-hmm. Still okay?
Yeah.
Okay, now make a fist, get the arm muscles engaged, and if at all you can tolerate it, then have the patient kind of like stabilize their arm into your belly here a little bit, because it engages the muscles. And then I'm going to bring this 6 centimeter bandage up to the arm. Now typically we reach about mid forearm. Here we go a little higher because we have a smaller arm to bandage. I would not typically bring this 6 centimeter past the elbow. So what I do here, I'm just going to tuck it in here. If this is not convenient for you, or you feel like it's not secure, you can certainly use a little piece of tape and tape each layer here. And if you notice, I made a little tab here, so if the patient later on takes the bandages off, it's easier to tease the tape off again with that little tab at the end of the bandage. So I check my pressure, and I'm going to migrate to an 8 centimeter. Another little trick. Instead of starting it like this, push in a little bit, and then have a tail sticking out, what you want to do is you want to angle it down a little bit. Angle it down, bring it around the wrist, so you're covering the wrist area again, not the hand, but the wrist. And now you're kind of like in control of the pressure. You bring it around the arm, bring it down. Next time you come around, you bring that bandage up a little bit, and you will see you'll get a herringbone pattern here on this bandage that will lend a little bit more compression on the forearm. And I'm going to do that all the way up just until I pass the cubital fossa. And then typically when I have a good coverage here on the forearm, and in case this 8 centimeter bandage reaches up higher, I would actually turn that bandage now into a spiral. We can take this out here, hold this here for a moment. Thank you. Gonna bring this around here, and then we're gonna just kind of like tape it here. So you can rest your arm for a moment. Thank you. Tape it up here. Okay. And this is your second layer of a multi-layer compression wrap for lymphedema. Now you notice that I did a herringbone pattern here. The herringbone pattern uses up a little bit more bandage, but it gives also a little bit more compression on the arm. And we may check for mobility here, make sure that the mobility is still there. It will be a little bit limited. That's natural with a multi-layer bandage, but it's still going to be able, she's still going to be able to do her ADLs, her activities of daily living. And when we start our 10 centimeter bandage, it's now a judgment call. If I started really low on the wrist or up a little bit higher, that depends on how much pressure I have here. It also depends on how much length I have. I know pretty much that when I start this here, in a spiral version, I would actually bring this around all the way to the top. I'm not engaging in a herringbone anymore because I don't want that much pressure on her arm anymore, so I'm going to bring this around in a spiral, go straight away over the cubital fossa, but make sure that you have good overlap and good coverage here at the elbow so it doesn't gap open later. I'm going to bring this all the way up to the top, and then just before I run out of short stretch here, I would actually go up all the way and try to determine my last turn around the proximal end of the arm. So even if we go a touch here under that padding bandage, that's good. So I'm going to do this, and then I'll bring it back down so that the end of the bandage is not going to end up on her shoulder. So here we're going to go really easy. Okay. And then we're going to tape it right here. So I'm going to have her hold it here for a sec. I'm going to use at least 2 or 3 strips of surgical tape to secure that bandage. And you can see that there is a little tab here for her to take it off, right? That's easier. And then at the end, I'm going to check the gradient. The compression gradient should decrease from distal to proximal. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have her engage the arm. That's really important. You will not be able to judge the compression unless she engages her arm muscles. So engage the arm. If you can tolerate it here, have her push in or use your hip if that's easier. So push in a little bit, and I'm going to give it a good squeeze from distal all the way to proximal. And we should see that the pressure is actually decreasing. You can see it's more mushy here than it is here. And then I'm going to rest the arm. I'm going to bring this down. This is important because imagine the person is going to sleep with that bandage. We don't want the short stretch bandages to chafe on the skin of the chest area. So we're going to bring this down a little bit so that makes it more comfortable for sleeping. And down here, we don't need that kind of like coverage. We're going to instruct her into, maybe some exercises with those bandages. Make sure that she has good range of motion and that she is not complaining about the pressure right now. How does it feel?
It feels good.
Feels good. We still can go back to the fingers, check the capillary refill, and that's still a good sign. It's good refill. Here, this is the application of Rosidal K for the upper extremity, using the Rosidal Soft as our padding material.